So we're looking at Excel Module 4 and looking at this chart here. Actually, we're looking at the spreadsheet, but we're going to make a chart out of it. So what you want to think about when you do charts is really what you want to say with the data, how you want to kind of convey information. Charts can become confusing if you have too much data in there. So if I charted entirely this whole workbook, it would just be all over the place. The idea is to kind of focus on certain parts of it, maybe make two charts. Let me show you an example here of how, first of all, to make a chart. So what you need to do first is select your data that you want to chart. So I'm just going to select everything. Just see what happens here. And then we're going to go to Insert, and here's the chart group here. So we have some different chart types. I'm just going to go with the default recommended chart here, which is a column chart, right? Actually, those are some different ones. Here's the column. Okay, so here's a simple column chart. And the first thing you can see is that, first of all, it's all over the place, right? We've got, 30 different bars. So it's just too much data to really look at. The other thing that's happening is this grand total, which is this guy here, is really overshadowing everything and making them all dwarf by comparison. So we really can't tell the difference between all of these small guys, right? So let's take a look at a more discrete data selection. For instance, let's take a look maybe at just the countries and quarter one. See what that does for us. So back into Insert and then our column chart. Same exact chart. So this is much more legible, right, to see what's going on. Now we get an idea of how the countries compare to each other. You can immediately see that the USA is the highest, India is the lowest, and kind of like the relationship between all of the other ones is much easier to see what's going on. Okay? So, you don't have to select continuous cells either. I can do something like maybe just select the countries and then hold down the Control key and select the totals. So here's that data. Okay, so the Control key would allow you to select what's called a non-contiguous or non-connected selection. Okay, so again, Insert Chart, and here's that data. It actually looks pretty much the same, but you get the idea. US is still up top and India is still down at the bottom. Okay, so planning the chart is important. Thinking about what you want to show, what you want to convey. Always think about your target audience and really what your objective is, what you're trying to communicate to them when you are making the chart. Okay, so once we create a chart, let me make another one here for you. We'll go with our simple one again. Okay, so when the chart is selected here, you see that you get Chart Tools tabs. You get a Design tab and a Format tab. And very familiar with, the way you kind of have different styles for tables or such in Word. You have the same thing going on here. So you can have all kinds of different chart styles where you can, have different formats and things like that. You can adjust the colors if you want to have a color theme that might be more related to your brand. I don't know why it's not working, but here we go. Your company colors like that. You can pick different themes like that. There are various elements we can add there. So you can see the axis, the X and Y axis is there. You can title those. They're pretty self-explanatory here. You can add things like data labels. So that'll help you interpret the data better. If I put in data labels in there, see now I can see the actual data that was here impressed upon there. So I don't have to say, oh, look, it's 6,000, but it's really not. It's 6,076 or whatever, right? So interpolate ones that are in between. Here you get the exact amount. So I like doing that, putting that data label in there. The legend, you really don't need a legend with this guy, but the legend is sometimes called the key, and that would be the color code to let you know, which one is which. Let me show you a chart with a legend. Might be some that has 2 quarters, right? So now we need a legend to see what the difference between the two of them is. Okay, so Excel will automatically insert the legend. Here it is, quarter 1, quarter 2. Tells you, the difference between blue and red, in each quarter. Okay, so the next objective then is to move and resize a chart. So a chart element, I like the idea of the chart appearing with the data, not on a separate sheet. So that's the way it's going to be here. The chart is embedded, we say. What does that mean? Well, it means that if we go in here and change this data, it obviously will affect the chart too. So let me just change this, and you'll see right away that this immediately changes to reflect that, right? So the chart itself can be moved around just by kind of dragging it. Maybe you want it down here. You want it to be bigger. I like it to be big too, so it kind of displays. You know, certainly don't want a small chart like this. Weird things start happening. It becomes less legible. So the bigger the better usually with the charts. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Change the chart design. Okay, so you can do all kinds of things to change the chart design. And if you go into the format area here, you can adjust all kinds of parameters in the way that the chart looks. The design really is more the look of the chart and not the kind of chart type, which I think is even more important. Okay? So we can actually take a look at some different chart types. So looking at this data, actually, let me simplify it again. Let's just go back to something more simple. Let's just do a couple of countries. I'm going to do Australia, Q1, and then hold down the Control key, do France, India, and the United States. Okay, so let's make a simple chart with that. Okay, so obviously very simple, right? So now I can do things like change the chart type. So this chart here is really good for comparing, right? We can kind of see an overall comparison. Let me change the chart type to a different type of chart and see what you think. What's the difference here? What would this show you? I see you're not seeing my screen, but maybe you want to just look on with hers. I don't know why you're not seeing mine. You logged on later maybe, right? That's why. So the value of this chart is probably showing some kind of a trend where data changes over time. So for instance, maybe it's not the greatest to have the countries here, but if I just looked at India for each quarter, this chart might be better, right? So I could see, well, we started good, we got bad, and then we got better. So a lot of times you might see this with a stock, right? I bought it here, and then, oh my God, it went down, but luckily I didn't sell it because then it went back up even higher, right? So this is good for tracking some kind of a trend. Maybe we look at the weather today, right, where the temperature goes over time or the rainfall. That would definitely work really nicely with this chart. Let's take a look at another one. How about this? What would you say that is looking at? It's the same data, right? But it's just a different way of representing it. So the strength of this one is kind of looking at 100% and how it divides up, so parts of a whole. So if this was our total budget and we were spending this much in the US and this much in India, it would be a good way to kind of see, how the 100% of something is divided up. Those to me are the three major types of charts, because when you look at this, a column is really the same thing as a bar, right? It just tipped over. A pie is the same thing as, a sunburst, really, or whatever. So some of them get really kind of esoteric, and I would say, again, keep it simple. It's probably best to kind of keep it as simple as possible. A line is similar to an area. So, those are the major things I'm thinking of as far as trends is comparison, parts of a whole, and trends. Good? Does that make sense? I like that on the quiz, that you understand the different chart types and their strengths. All right, good. So what else do we got here? Annotate and draw on a chart. So you can add elements to the chart with that. So if you go to Format here, these are your annotation tools. So you can do things like maybe grab this arrow tool and then drag that out and then add a text box and say something like best quarter. Okay? Or needs work or something like that, right? So it kind of points out, I maybe want to put the arrow the other direction. Might be better, right? But this is a nice way to kind of, again, train your viewers' eyes onto what area you really want them to focus on, especially if the chart is very busy. Okay? So there's our pie chart. And the other thing that the book asks you to do then is to make a 3D exploded pie chart. So let's try that. What I'm going to do is just delete these guys here. Get this cleaned up again. And now, in order to make it a 3D chart, I can change the chart type, go to pie, and here are the different options here. The 3D pie, donut. Okay, so there's our 3D pie. And then I can, again, look at different kind of designs here, whichever one works best. I like that one, right? This one is very kind of three-dimensional. Okay, and then to explode it, all you got to do is double-click on one of the sections, and then you can pull it out like that. So that's called an exploded pie chart. So we really want to focus on India here, so we would do that to explode the chart out. Good? Quick chapter. Nothing too, obviously it's really important because displaying your data as a graphic makes it a lot easier to see what's going on. When you look at this, you really have to kind of scan through it and analyze it, and it's kind of grayed out. This tells you right away the U.S. is good, India is bad, or whatever. So it's much easier. A picture tells 1,000 words. Anybody have any comments or questions before I stop the recording here?